Kevin Starr is a historian who truly made history. Today we celebrate his warm and wise presence, but we also celebrate the impact of his genius, his generous spirit, and his astonishing vision. With the fullness of his being, Kevin Starr loved his nation, loved his Catholic Church, loved the Academy, loved the fellowship of the Bohemian Grove, loved his native California, and yes, he loved the University of Southern California. And what Professor Starr loved, he would enrich. What he loved, he would bless. He would make it holy by placing a light upon it in a manner few others could, and by nurturing it to its most glorious blossom. When Professor Starr began shining his scholarly light on the golden state of California, he would illuminate forever one of the most pivotal eras in recent human history. And although he was a scholar of the highest magnitude, and although his work was seemingly without peer, within the USC academic community, he was the model for a peer, serving selflessly and tirelessly. His drive and his discipline allowed him to be one of the most brilliant writers and scholars of his generation. Yet he remained ever faithful and active in his academic service, his public service, and his teaching. For Professor Starr, the teacher-student relationship was sacred, eternal, and paramount. For him, the protocols and rituals of the Academy were sacred traditions to elevate the human spirit and to awaken the intellect and conscience of a community. Professor Starr took immense pride in his service as an ROTC student, and for decades he served as a champion and supporter of USC's own ROTC and veteran students. A little story, a personal one I would like to share with you is that I will never forget it. It was 12 years ago that Kevin was a member of the provost search committee, and when I was a candidate for provost. And I went for my interview with the committee right here in Beaufort one Saturday morning, and I focused my opening statement in the importance of the humanities. And naturally, that generated a Q&A. Leo remembers that. He was also a member of the committee. Generated a Q&A for about 25 minutes on the importance of the humanities. And then, as I was answering one of the questions, I hear that big voice that kind of took all the oxygen out of the room, where he said, "I think we had enough of your Hellenistic background. Now we have questions about research." That was Kevin. So, for generations, the California dream had been a vacuum and chanting notion. Yet it took Kevin Starr to capture that dream, to explore it, to define it, and to articulate it. And he did this so meaningfully, so memorably, that he will forever be associated with the California dream. He chose to stand intellectually at what he called the nexus of a California of fact and a California of imagination. He saw his native state broadly and clearly as it is, complete, complex, and at many times contradictory. Yet within him burned an eternal optimism about the Golden State and its ability to forever reinvent itself. He linked the state in perpetuity to the spirit of the original gold rush, which he characterized as the intensified pursuit of human happiness. For generations, the established societies of the Atlantic looked upon California, particularly young Southern California, as lacking historical perspective or import. Yet, Professor Starr suggested Californians had an unusual passion for history because of their conviction that the artistic, cultural, and scientific renaissance underway here was as momentous as any previous one. He described early generations of Californians as a people alive to the full play of sense and spirit. And fittingly, Professor Starr painted California's vistas and its developments in the grandest biblical terms. These involve themes of struggle and redemption, hope lost and hope found, and of the creation of a city on a hill that would inspire a world. Professor Starr also celebrated the manner in which the California dream found expression right here at our university. He celebrated USC's academic community and Trojan family as the essence of the California ideal: open, dynamic, forward-thinking, resilient, and forever optimistic. And he celebrated USC's dedication to developing the California ideal of the whole person, a person active in mind, body, and spirit, a person able to turn dreams to reality within a uniquely supportive social and physical environment. Professor Starr came to USC in 1989, just 2 years before I joined the faculty of USC. Over a quarter century, he would be my dear friend and mentor. He served on the advisory committee that recommended me to become the provost of the university. Then, a few years later, he also served on a committee that recommended me to serve as president. But one of the most memorable moments in my time at USC came in 2006, when he invited me to join him, his wife Sheila, and daughter Mariam at the White House. There, proudly representing USC and the Trojan family, he received the National Medal for the Humanities from President George W. Bush. That honor and all the others could not have been more deserved. And today we finally honor and celebrate him with all our heart, with sorrow and with gratitude. Kevin has made us richer by sharing freely the incomparable wealth of his insight and his optimism. Our success is indeed his legacy. He helped us understand who we are and where we can still go. He defined our past in a way that serves as a roadmap forward to our best future. And just as he brought past events freshly alive, his example and his achievements will remain powerfully alive. Kevin Starr, our friend and our teacher. We miss him already. Thank you.
To the immediate and extended family of Kevin Starr, to his Trojan family. 3 anecdotes will suffice. The first of which is, I knew Kevin Starr to be a mediator, a skilled mediator. As a member of the Los Angeles City Council in the 90s, I had more than one occasion to have lunch with Kevin right across the street at the little restaurant that's a part of the hotel that is now owned by the university. It wasn't then. It was the point at which Mayor Dick Reardon had just been elected, and those of us who were on the city council weren't particularly inclined to cause it to be the easiest job that the mayor may have ever had. So among other things, it was my assignment to make sure that he earned it. And then came Kevin. So at one of our lunch meetings, he said, "Mark, you ought to lay off. He's a good guy. He's a good guy." And I think Dick Reardon is here to attest to the fact that Kevin's mediating skills have had a lasting effect. Kevin Starr was a mediator. Anybody who can bring Dick Reardon and Mark Ridley Thomas together ought to be happy about that. And so a shout out to Mayor Dick Reardon in honor of Kevin. The second is, by the time I transitioned to the state legislature, he was moving back and forth on that Southwest airline as I was. Sheila, you'll recall, and we had any number of times to cause the rest of the passengers to know that Kevin and I were on that plane. I'll leave it at that. And the final anecdote I will share it was in late 2006. It was near the time of the death of the godfather of soul, James Brown. And I called Kevin to invite him to be the keynote speaker at the 15th anniversary of the Empowerment Congress, an entity that this university and its president has embraced warmly over the years, now 25 years, but then 15 years. And we were talking, he did graciously accept, and we were talking, and I said, you know, the world is kind of stunned today, in part, particular parts of it, because of the death of James Brown. And Kevin said, you know, I read that. I listened to that music a little bit. And you know, Mark, I feel good. Kevin Starr had soul, ladies and gentlemen. A wonderful human being, an exceptional intellect. He made it abundantly clear to each of us with ease. And it was on the occasion of one of the installments in those marvelous works that he did that we had the opportunity to honor him at the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. All members were excited that he was there, and we were absolutely clear that we were in the presence of an individual who had his own brand of humility, but in that context, he stood very, very tall. And so it is that we say farewell to him, and it was on that occasion of his passing that the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors did adjourn in his memory. A salute to one who was obviously most deserving and will be documented in the history of this county as one who made a significant contribution, not only as one who understood Los Angeles, but the state of California, the nation, and yea, even the world. And so, Sheila and family, it is documented in the presentation that I've made to you privately. Let me conclude by saying, to God be the glory for the life and the witness of Kevin Starr.
Sheila, thank you for including me as part of the family with my younger brother, Mr. Mark Ridley Thomas over here. Can't you notice we all like to talk about noticing the family resemblance? Been friends for a long time. On the Monday following the unfortunate passing of Dr. Starr, I raised my microphone in the California Senate to honor his memory. He was a friend of more than 40 years. When I was a young California historian, it was Dr. Starr who reviewed and commented on my dissertation on Frank Brown and water development in California. And I found later, when he was librarian, that he had it right there in his office next to his desk, and my heart sung. It was Kevin Starr who was part of our Capital Institute that we created in the California legislature to train new members. And every new season, a new crop of young legislators met and had lunch in the office of Dr. Starr to both be inspired by his wisdom and his understanding of the history, and to get them to understand the importance of the state library. It was part of the program that all members, irrespective of party, came and participated in. I remember the discussions we had during the dark days. I guess I didn't see Mayor Reardon here, but he's back there according to what Mark says. But of coming up with a borough system and the great discussions we had with a number of civic leaders as an alternative to the special reorganization that was in discussion called secession, but that was just, he was an extraordinary help. And I remember the discussions with Arnold Schwarzenschnitzel where we were talking about the idea of forming a party of California. And he was such a great advisor to and an inspiration and teacher of the governor. You know, the New York Times, and I think this is a fitting, is to best capture his genius in his own words. First, I just want to quote a couple of quotes. First, from a USC College magazine, figuring it's appropriate, Mr. President. He talked about his love for writing, and he says, "If I don't write, I get anxiety-ridden," said Dr. Starr in an interview with USC College magazine. On the recurring natural disasters in the Los Angeles Times in 1993, Dr. Starr so eloquently said, "Southern California has used technology to materialize an imagined society of garden cities and suburbs. Now and then, it must pay a price for its reordering of the environment." On diversity in 2000 in the San Diego Union Tribune, Dr. Starr said, "If there are any people on the planet, any language, any religion not represented in California this very morning, this diversity then is the persistent DNA code of California." And on the rising Latino population in the New York Times in 2001, Dr. Starr said, "The Anglo hegemony was only an intermittent phase in California's arc of identity, extending from the arrival of the Spanish." On the Central Valley, in 2004, in his book, Coast of Dreams, he said, "Mesopotamia, the rice fields of China, the Po Valley, and the Central Valley stood in a long line of irrigation cultures which had, in turn, given birth to civilization itself." And lastly, in the Millennium of California, in his book, A History of California in 2005, he said, "California had long since become one of the prisms through which the American people, for better or for worse, could glimpse their future." The depth and dimension of this man's mind, the ability to integrate ideas, was nothing less than extraordinary. For those of us that were students of California history, that I was and still remain, who now participate in the discussion of public policy, he is and remains an inspiration, and thank God he wrote all those books. You guys, Sheila, you wrote all those books, because hopefully we can pass that on to the next generation of Californians. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks for all for being here. He's just an extraordinary, extraordinary individual.
Having joined the Trojan family only last summer, I didn't have the chance to know Kevin as well as so many of you did. But as you know, it never took long for him to make a lasting impression. When I was transitioning into my new role as Dean of the Dornsife College, I remember how generous he was in making a point of helping me feel welcome. I remember looking out into the crowd during my installation ceremony here in this room, at this podium, and there front and center was that trademark bow tie. Like Churchill or Schlesinger, Kevin Starr was among the rare few who could really own that look. He had come down from San Francisco just for the occasion, and we'd only met once before, and briefly at that. But he was kind enough to take the time to be there, and I think that speaks to something special about Kevin. He had a deep reverence for the institution that is the great American Research University, a deep reverence for the esteem of the academy. Kevin was there because he cherished this amazing scholarly environment. He was energized by the camaraderie among those who pursue the life of the mind. And Kevin was proud of his colleagues and proud to be part of USC. This was clear when he invited me to attend a lunch with the Society of University Professors. There he presided over the group, always quick with an anecdote, but just as interested in the stories and the successes of others. I remarked over lunch that one of my goals is to help students understand that learning is not just a day job. He responded with enthusiasm and spoke to the promise offered by USC's efforts to enhance the living learning environment on campus. He followed up with that, particularly focused on the opportunity presented by the USC Village for faculty to bond with students in an informal setting, helping them to learn firsthand the love of intellectual discourse. He was excited about the university's trajectory, excited for the future. Yet we know that USC Dornsife would not be what it is today without the legacy of Kevin Starr and the path that he helped to set out. He was the champion who identified USC's integral role in the development of the region. He was a magnetic force for attracting outstanding faculty and graduate students. He generated excitement and support to launch the Huntington USC Institute on California and the West, which continues to lead the study of our state's history. I know Kevin was proud that it is under the leadership of his good friend, Bill Deverell. While Kevin is remembered as the preeminent scholar of California history, the tributes that poured in after his passing point to another legacy that he leaves behind. Kevin was inspirational to thousands of students. He truly embraced his role as teacher and mentor. I think one of his former students put this particularly well when she wrote, "Rather than excluding one story at the expense of another, Professor Starr's brand of history was a kind of enchanted roadmap, one to which details are constantly added and whose blank space is never filled. In leading me through the discovery of my own home, he gave me the tools by which I could discover the world." This is exactly the kind of educational approach and mindset that I hope all Dornsife students will come to appreciate by the time that they graduate. Kevin reminded us all that learning is an ongoing adventure, one in which each success opens new doors of knowledge and challenges us to approach even bigger questions. A few of you might know that Kevin was asked to contribute to the preamble of USC's 2011 strategic vision. I found in part of his characterization of the university some ideas that very much reflect Kevin himself. He wrote, "USC has acquired, as a matter of institutional culture, a joy in life, celebrated through a concern for the health and well-being of the Trojan family and the people of Los Angeles." It later goes on to say, "USC has prided itself as well upon a certain habit of mind connected to Southern California, a can-do attitude endowed with more than its fair share of panache. Perhaps this is what has attracted the world to USC and USC to the world. Anyone who knew Kevin can attest to his joy of life, his concern for the well-being of the academic community, his love of California, and of course, his abundance of panache." Like the voice we hear in his writing, like the places he treasured and studied, like the university he helped to bring to prominence, Kevin Starr was truly one of a kind. While it is difficult to grapple with his passing, it is important that today is indeed a celebration of Kevin's incredible life. The energy and devotion he brought to our community deserves celebration, as it will continue to bring out the best in all of us. Remembering the man who had a story for everything, let's take this occasion to celebrate his own. Thank you.
This is a melancholy occasion, poignant and magnificent somehow, all at once, brought about by the loss of one of our great trees. Can I start with Whitman? Kevin would have liked that. He would have smiled, offered up a quote or a reference or a story, and then he would have urged me on. Kevin Starr was the personification of exhortation. Whitman, Bill, the cool gray poet, tell us of Whitman. I am large, Whitman sang of himself. I contain multitudes. Can we stipulate that Kevin Starr contained multitudes? Boy, did he. I have to say that losing him and his multitudes has been more painful than I could have imagined. When my USC friends and colleagues asked me to be part of today's memorial and celebration, I wondered how to capture even parts of this man's life and his contributions. His multitude overwhelms. So this is merely facets, anecdotal, but no less heartfelt for lack of comprehensiveness. When I was in graduate school, I struck up a friendship with a student studying in the Princeton architectural program named Marion. We are friends to this day, and she is, as is her sister Jessica, the daughter of Kevin and Sheila Starr. But I did not know that when I became friends with her. One Sunday in early 1985, the New York Times Book Review featured a review of Kevin's second volume of his life's work series. This was Inventing the Dream, the volume that initiated his love of Los Angeles. The review was written by Wallace Stegner. I pored over it, budding historian that I was, and I can remember reading it on the floor of my apartment. It was a vindication of sorts, one great man of Western letters reviewing the work of another, and in such august pages no less. Later that day, I saw my friend Marion. Did you see, she asked me, that my father's book was reviewed in the New York Times Book Review? Wait a minute. You're Kevin Starr's daughter? Yes. You never told me that. You never asked me. Even before my incredulity faded, Marion asked if I'd like to meet Kevin and Sheila someday, and you can guess my response. Before long, the invitation had been offered. The next time I was in San Francisco, I was to be a guest in the Starr home for dinner. And so it happened. Dinner at Kevin Starr's. Imagine my trepidation. Wallace Stegner was in my head. I'd met him once in college when a kindly professor of mine arranged a lunch for just the two of us. I think I shook for most of the lunch. Stegner was courtly and bored, and I can't blame him. I was young and tongue-tied, and I think I stammered something like, "Was Ken Kesey fun to work with?" Would the same be true at the Starrs, meaning would I make a fool of myself? I arrived 20 minutes before I was expected because I was excited and on tenterhooks. And when I was ushered upstairs to their place, it was as if I'd arrived in a time machine with its clock set to the 1890s. The 19th century was draped all around us, the paintings and the books, the bookcases, the decorative art, the amber light. It could have been a smaller version of the Palace Hotel, shrink-wrapped and transported from 1896 to 1986. I could not believe it. The table was set for more than three of us, and I half wondered if Bret Hart or Jack London or Frank Norris or Ina Coolbrith would join us. They didn't, at least not in the flesh. But their words, their spirit, their art, and their contributions skated around us all evening. It makes so much sense to me now. Kevin and Sheila alongside him lived to venerate California as everything it has been praised to be: an idea, a hope, a promise, a civilization, a triumph, a beacon, an inspiration, even a bet. Their home wasn't filled with or by decoration so much as it was marked by processes of commemoration and the studious obligation that ensued from them. Let me pause a minute for a Sheila digression. Pardon me. It's a non-Kevin story, but he would have loved it. Also in graduate school, I raked leaves and shoveled snow for Ashley Montague and his wife Marjorie. He was a famous anthropologist, witty and elderly and kind. She was his life partner, elegant and graceful, and I adored them. I was at dinner with them one evening when a breathless young woman approached our table. "Dr. Montague," she said, "I have every one of your books, and I can't believe I'm meeting you here at this restaurant. You are my hero." Turning to Marjorie, she said, "What is it like to live with a genius?" "I don't know," Marjorie said, kindly and softly. Why don't you ask my husband? Regarding this moment of Marjorie's brilliance, Ashley said, don't you think that was worthy of immortality? As he had his Marjorie and she him, Kevin had Sheila and she him. Sheila was Guinevere to that strapping Lancelot, helpmeet, spouse, partner, researcher, mother to their daughters, keeper of his calendar, gatekeeper to his time and commitments, as indispensable to him as he was to her. He was famed, justifiably, but he doesn't get there without her. And in my experience, he never failed to acknowledge that as a debt born entirely of love. Kevin Starr will not be replaced. He so deserves his one-of-a-kindness. When he published his remarkable book, Americans in the California Dream, in the early 1970s, he immediately became the most important historian of California since Carrie McWilliams, also one of our own, a graduate of the USC School of Law. Shortly thereafter, as the books and the reckoning with California's promise kept coming and got richer and deeper, he became the most important historian of California we've ever had. He will stay in that deservedly lofty perch for a long, long time. But exalted is not the same as above it all. Kevin helped thousands of people who shared his interest in California, school kids wrestling with History Day assignments, preservation students doing historic site reviews, local authors doing local histories, journalists, school teachers, stereotypical historic society volunteers, grant writers, grant seekers, grant givers, librarians, library students, archivists, curators, you name it. He had status, lots of it, and I've seen him call on it. But he had more than an egalitarian streak. He had a democratic ethos about tillers in the many fields of journalism, librarianship, history, and culture. He was one of them. But I think he truly believed he really was just one of them in that field, tilling alongside this or that one who'd never gain his stature, but could be recognized, uplifted, encouraged, helped, or just plain befriended by him. And so he did that, over and over and over, again and again and again. There's example and inspiration in his work, of course, but so too in multitudes unsurpassed with the sheer humanity of the man. Thank you.
I want to speak about two aspects of the multifaceted, large-hearted person Kevin was. First as friend, colleague, co-conspirator, and second as the galvanic force behind the establishment of the Society of University Professors. Now, wait a second, that's not two, that's four. But that was vintage Kevin. Like Proteus in the Odyssey, he could never be pinned down. He was always changing, he was always involved, he was always showing a new side of himself and his work. One trait of Kevin's I always found most endearing was the easy way he called me, and I'm sure many of you here, amigo. He had that kind of ready embrace, an easy intimacy that conveyed a sense of adventure just around the corner. Kevin was magnanimous in the root Latin sense of the word. He had a great soul, and he shared his experiences, his wisdom, and his ideas in a way that was more than magnanimous, an overflow of his rich embrace of the life of learning and all that learning had to offer. Kevin had a deep respect for institutions, whether it was the Catholic Church, the Democratic Party, the state of California, or the university in general, and of course, the University of Southern California in particular. Temperamentally, he was a diametric opposite of a cynic in his positive view of things. But no matter how committed he was to those institutions, he had no illusions about their infallibility for two reasons, and maybe I can stick to two this time. First and most important was his sense of history. Emerson says that an institution is the lengthened shadow of a man, and the kind of history that Kevin wrote so brilliantly was filled with men and women, visionary and fallible, whose incremental actions and ideas helped create the institutions he admired. Kevin was constantly and perpetually an enthusiast, and his enthusiasm was infectious. But beneath that unparalleled bonhomie was always a sharp critical sense, and that sense of history allowed him to celebrate achievements, even that he was unflinching about the darker aspects of their growth. The other reason was his unceasing effort to make these institutions better and to enhance the values they ideally embodied. And this was especially true at USC. The two that I'm most familiar with are the Sidney Harman Academy of Polymathic Studies and the Society of University Professors. For both, Kevin was the energizer and the pole star around which all was arrayed. And Karen Hubner was his great assistant in the Harman Academy, and I'm sure she will talk about that shortly. So I have to incorporate some Latin here in tribute to Kevin's rendering from Virgil of the USC Latin motto, Fas regna Troiae, the destined reign of Troy. What he did for the Society of University Professors was even more sui generis. The title of university professor had been around for some time as a way of honoring those members of the faculty who made important contributions in two or more disciplines. And some of those who had that title, or were given that title in earlier years, are with us today. But in the late 1990s, President Steve Sample and Provost Lloyd Armstrong decided to make those appointments an annual event. As yet, though, it was obviously a distinct honor, but still only a title. When Kevin was appointed in 1999, he made it into an institution. And the Society of University Professors, as it is today, is without a doubt the lengthened shadow of Kevin. Assuming the semi-comic mantle of your humble steward, he turned this honor to individuals into a group, organized a monthly lunch, invited informal speakers, and with Sheila's great help, arranged an annual dinner at the California Club, and even designed university professor ties for the men and scarves for the women. In the diffuse world of academia, where people often venture little out of their own fields, he thus created innumerable opportunities for scientists, social scientists, and teachers of the arts and humanities to come together to share their perspectives and their passions. Presiding over this group with his special blend of eloquence and sly humor was always Kevin. It would not have existed without him. Its continued existence, now for almost 20 years, is just one of the many tributes to his enormous talent for public eloquence, for unsurpassed erudition, and especially for friendship. Farewell, amigo.
So I'm going to tell you a story that captures Kevin Starr for me. It happens to be the last time that I saw him. It was this last semester, fall, November 30th, the last week of the fall semester, and I was in my office in the Harmon Academy. And the Harmon Academy is a space for students and faculty to come together outside the formal disciplinary departments across campus and explore and think outside the box without grades, without pressure. And President Nikias brought together a whole core of professors like Leo Brody across the university to conceptualize. Well, in 2010, Kevin Starr was asked to be the first director and actually implement and put flesh on the bone of the academy. So it's located in the second floor of Doheny Library, appropriate for interdisciplinary thought, multidisciplinary thought, and Kevin Starr. And it was this Wednesday, it was 1:30. Kevin was wrapping up the final session of his epic History of the American West class that was held in the academy. And this was his last class. He was retiring from teaching. And my class, Los Angeles, A Polymathic Inquiry, which Kevin and I designed 4 years earlier, and which I now co-teach with Bill Deverell, was to begin at 2. And Kevin really wanted to stay and say hello to Bill. So with his cane in hand, he walked over to one of the Academy's exquisite 1930s oak chairs, which he loved, and sat down. He was sitting in the chair against the north wall of the Academy with its arched windows behind that overlook McCarthy Quad, and in walks one of our students. And like a magnet, the student drew up the chair and sat with Kevin. In typical fashion, Kevin asked her name, where she's from, what's her major, the details of her project for my class, her plans after college, her family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was watching this and I saw Kevin as rapt with the student as the student was rapt with him. Then another student walked in, pulled up a chair, and the scene was repeated. Then another, and a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth, and soon there was this broader and broader semicircle around Kevin. And he engaged each one with a genuine interest in not only their studies, but their lives. And they all leaned into him. And that's because Kevin let them in. By 1:55, all 12 of my students had arrived and were chatting it up with Kevin, telling them about their work, and Kevin offering each of them specific guidance on a resource or scholar that they might connect with that would enhance their project. And then our guest discussant, Professor Annette Kim, walked in and joined the conversation, and wondering, I suppose, if we were going to be holding class against the wall. And then Bill walked in. And I saw him, he took in the scene, and a broad smile came across his face, because he knew this was Kevin. This is Kevin Starr. I watched him for 12 years find the touchstone with every student he encountered. He was impassioned about drawing out their best and affirming, elevating each with his intimate engagement of their work and their lives. This high purpose, his calling, I believe, is what informed him when he created the Harmon Academy for Polymathic Study program in the fall of 2010. To be sure, he designed the Polymathic program as an intellectual, multidisciplinary platform. But foremost, Kevin envisioned the Academy as a space and community for students to pursue and develop a meaningful life. So was he successful? I feel so incredibly lucky I was able to know him and have him as a professor. He will be so greatly missed. He was as kind and generous as he was brilliant. Winona Leone, Harmon Academy Fellow, class of 2015. It will never be an overstatement that my time in the Academy under your and his leadership provided the singularly most intellectual and formative development opportunities I had at USC. Each conversation and meeting was, and still is, a treasure. Warren Tickner, Harmon Fellow, class of 2014. Dr. Starr was extremely approachable and always interested in what we as students had to say about the given topic. Although he was such an esteemed professor and historian, I never felt intimidated or nervous around him. His love of teaching and helping his students was palpable. He set a wonderful example for all those in high places in academia. I went to USC because I wanted to study with him. To sit in Kevin's office was to never be able to write fast enough and to wish you had at least 3 more hands and 6 more ears just so you could be getting all this down. During the first course I took with Starr, he read aloud from the literature of California. It was a fragment of an early Native American poem, and his voice broke as he read it. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm just an old man moved to tears by the beauty of this poem." Julia Arthur Wick, Harmon Fellow, class of 2014. My first interaction with Dr. Starr was through his books, long before I took his polymathic Los Angeles class and met him in person. I remember reading about Central Avenue in South LA where I grew up, its jazz scene. Maybe it was The Dream Endures. But more importantly, he was an inspiration to me. I remember when I learned that he grew up poor in San Francisco and raised in a Catholic orphanage. He had a PhD from Harvard. He was the state librarian. He was a world-renowned scholar, but nonetheless, he had humble beginnings, like me. Eduardo Molinero Piñón. Harmon Academy student, class of 2014. Kevin shaped the Academy to be a space of deep intellectual inquiry and community where students might experience the joy of communal exploration and discovery, and through this, the development of the meaningful life. The Harmon Academy is in a real sense an extension of Kevin himself. And current director Tara McPherson and I remain committed to his vision. Yes, Kevin was a success. He knew the meaningful life. And in my heart and mind, Kevin lived and lives a life triumphant. Thank you.
In the book of Ecclesiasticus, it is written, "Let us now praise famous men and our fathers that begat us. The Lord has wrought great glory by them." It is my privilege today, my sad and heavy honor, to speak a few final words in praise and remembrance of one such famous man, our beloved father and dear friend, Kevin Starr. Kevin was by any measure a major public figure, an outstanding civil servant, a visionary librarian, a distinguished professor, and the greatest California historian ever. In an age when intellectuals have few heroes, when few scholars even enter the public sector, Kevin was a hero. His service as California State Librarian demonstrated the huge practical impact an engaged intellectual can have on civic life. His decades at the University of Southern California helped reshape a fine regional school into a great global university. His monumental History of California explored and explained the complex destiny of his native place in a way that spoke to both scholars and the common reader. The dozens of libraries he built across the state, like the many volumes of history he published, stand as a permanent memorial of this remarkably productive, persuasive, and practical scholar-statesman. Kevin moved with ease from library to State House, from classroom to newsroom, from a U.S. Army tank to a USC professorship, because for him, they were all part of the same inclusive enterprise of civilization and education. For Kevin, there was no higher calling than civil service, except perhaps also to create that rare kind of scholarship which is essentially civic. He was not only a great intellectual figure, Kevin Starr was, for decades, the living memory of California. Let us now praise this famous man and our Father who begat us. For Kevin was a father too, and not only to his daughters Jessica and Marion and his 7 grandchildren. This room today is full of men and women he adopted as sons and daughters, and upon whom he showered fatherly love, attention, paternal praise, and counsel. Whenever Kevin spoke of himself, he always did so in terms of family. He called himself a son of California, a son of the church, a 4th-generation San Franciscan. Despite the sorrows of his own early life, he saw society as a family. And his many public roles, he created and sustained a vast family, a mighty tribe of students and scholars, historians and theologians, librarians and leaders, many of whom have traveled great distances to be here today. He reveled in their company and took every opportunity to socialize with them. To describe Kevin, we must adopt the high style of language he loved and summon up an international lexicon of human happiness with words imported like fine champagnes from France. No lesser vocabulary will suffice. He exuded joie de vivre, bonhomie, élan, éclat, esprit de corps, and savoir-faire. And this brings us to the great mystery of Kevin's existence. Somehow, while running the state or city library, while teaching a full load of classes, while lunching and dining at the Bohemian, the Californian, the Sunset, the Olympic, the University, and the Chit Chat clubs, Kevin Starr managed to write his magisterial 8-volume History of California, his poetic celebration of the Golden Gate Bridge, his prodigious history of the colonial Catholic Church in North America, and even a novel. But maybe his astonishing productivity wasn't a mystery. Maybe his secret was named Sheila, who not only helped and encouraged him as a caring and affectionate wife, but was a full partner in every page he wrote. She made possible a life in which he wrote so constantly, so brilliantly, until the day he died. When I remember Kevin, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, I envision him most vividly sitting at table, surrounded by friends and family, rejoicing in their company, delighting in their conversation and high spirits. For Kevin, every meeting, no matter how casual, was an event. No occasion was too small for celebration. A casual lunch was afforded the ceremonial attention of a banquet. This was the genius of his friendship. Everyone was important to him. I wish I could say more about this great and good man. I have offered a few epigrams for a person who deserves an epic. And it is hard to say farewell. The prophets have described our heavenly afterlife as a banquet or a feast. To quote the book of Proverbs, "Wisdom hath built her house, she hath hewn her 7 pillars, she hath prepared her meat, she hath mixed her wine, she hath set her table." Tonight, at that heavenly feast, the table of wisdom is brighter, the talk more lively, the toasts more numerous, and joy more abundant, because that eternal company now includes our Kevin. May flights of angels sing him to his rest. Thank you.
You know, Kevin should be here, not me. First of all, I want to thank you, President Max Nikias and Nikki Nikias, for your kindness and generosity to me and Kevin over the years. Dean Amber Miller, Professors Leo Browdy, Bill Deverell, Dana Gioia, Dr. Karen Hubner, I am grateful for your friendship and your remarks today. Professors Peter Gordon and Alan Creditor, thank you for recruiting Kevin to USC 28 years ago. Kevin, of course, as you know, believed in the medieval model of professors engaging with students at a university. It was the enthusiastic exchange of ideas and observations with his colleagues and with his students in the classroom that was, for him, the university. That's what he cared about. Whether it was recalling film noir with Leo Browdy, probing the teachings of Moses Maimonides with Saul Golem, or the meaning of urban icons with Vanessa Schwartz, discussing Catholic poets with Dana Gioia, or Spanish history with Manuel Casals, Kevin savored each of these conversations. Again, that's what mattered to him. In the words of Harmon Academy fellow Colin Conwell, Professor Starr made us all feel as if every moment might genuinely be filled with wonder. And for that, we salute him. Forever may he flourish in the hearts of the students that knew him. As all of you know, Kevin had a heart open to each person who came into his life. People naturally trusted him, and he had an intuitive way of acknowledging the value of each person. Instinctively, he sought to give, to do something for that person. For myself, I knew Kevin as an overwhelmingly kind, good, empathetic, and generous husband, father, and grandfather, and friend to so many. I remain grateful that we shared together what Willa Cather called the precious, the incommunicable past. And I remain grateful to you for coming to be here with me to honor and to remember Kevin and to celebrate his life. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sheila and Maria, thank you so much for being here today. As I told you earlier, it was so important for us to have this event, and made it even more special for you to be here with us. I want to thank everybody for coming. Please stay. We can share a lot of stories about Kevin as the reception continues. And the last thing I wanted to tell you is that if you find yourselves at the St. Francis Hotel, I believe it's a Westin now, at Union Square in San Francisco, at the bar and the restaurant area, this is where I learned from Kevin. Probably you remember, Sheila, that we had breakfast there, that he said to me, and that was a number of years ago, at that corner in that table, that's when the Harvard University recruiter interviewed me. And that's how I ended up getting the scholarship to go to Harvard University. So I had asked him to go and sit at that particular table, and I took a photo of him, and I'm going to send it to you. Thank you so much for coming.